it for you. Communication is the act of giving, receiving, and sharing information, right? And in other words, when we are talking, when we are writing, we are listening or reading, we are communicating. And good communicators listen carefully, speak clearly, and respect different opinions. That is was the opening slide of Unit 3. Then I moved on to further exploring this word communication, and we found that it is from Latin word communicare, which means to share, and it is the process of translating information and understanding. And then the researchers have shown us a very strange sort of research. The finding is that 7% of the information is communicated through words, 7% only, whereas 55% accounts for what sort of vocal tone we are used, and then body language accounts for 38%. That is why we say that different persons have got different communication style. Then we moved on to communication process, and the communication process refers to a series of actions or steps. It is communication process consists of a series of actions or steps taken in order to communicate. And it involves several components such as the sender of the communication, the actual message sent, the encoding of the message, the receiver, and the decoding of the message. And if you want to see all what is written on this slide in a photo form, here it is. There is a sender at the extreme left, then encoding takes place, and then there's a message, then decoding of the message takes place, and there's a receiver. So there's a feedback also, and the message may be distorted if there's a noise. So this is the process of communication. I repeat it for you. This is very basic, and you must be well aware of it. There is a sender, there is an actual message, encoding, and then decoding, and then the receiver. So we going through the communication process, then we come to the types of communication. Generally, there are 4 types of communication, and each type of communication has its own importance. What are those 4 types of communication? Number 1 is verbal communication. Verbal communication is interacting through speaking. It is the most popular way of communicating that we regularly use in a form of talking. I am talking to you, I am communicating with you partially. My partial communication with you is verbal. I said partially, not wholly. If the slides would not have been there, I would have been 100% having verbal communication with you. Then is forms of verbal communication. What are different forms of verbal communication? That one is intrapersonal communication. It is the form of communication we have with ourselves. Now, you might have found people talking to themselves. They are sitting and talking to themselves. Okay, tomorrow I'll go there, I'll meet that, I'll take this, I'll buy something this, for I'll bring that home. Intrapersonal, something which they are planning, something they are talking about, that is intrapersonal. And interpersonal communication is the form of communication we have with another person. I am having one-to-one interpersonal communication with you presently. Then we have this small group communication. If there would have been another student there in the workshop, or a couple of more, there would have been small group communication. But if I am talking to, on space, I'm talking to innumerable people on a public issue or a public topic, that is a public communication. So it is when we give a speech in large gathering, that is a public communication. Then I said there are four types of communication. First one was verbal communication, and then there were further four sub types of verbal communication. Now we are going to go for second main type of communication, that is non-verbal communication. And in non-verbal communication is the process of interacting without speaking or making noise. Essentially you have to use body language. Now you enter your house and you find your children not behaving well, and you just frown at them. You don't speak a word, you just frown at them. So that is your non-verbal communication. Your body language, your facial gestures, your facial expression, your eye contact, and your touch. At times, somebody, some of your somebody sitting with you speaks something which she shouldn't have spoken. You just elbow her, right? That is, non-verbal communication, meaning by don't say, stop here. So appearance, right? Appearance is also a sort of non-verbal communication. The way you make your appearance, that speaks for itself. For example, using sign language is a form of non-verbal communication. We talked a lot about handicapped persons like hearing impaired and deaf, and when they communicate with one another, they communicate in signs. That is non-verbal communication. Then third type, I said four types of communication. One, verbal. Second, non-verbal. Third, written communication. Written communication is communicating with somebody in writing. I have sent an email to you. You have sent a letter to me. You have sent a WhatsApp message to me. That is verbal. That is written communication taking place. Then there is visual communication. Visual communication is communication with signs. With signs, not only with signs, but with, say, send you a picture, send you a drawing, send you a chart, map, send you a graph, somebody send you some colorful thing. Somebody is dressed in black colors. Now that signifies something. Graphic designs, illustration, and industrial design, advertising, animation, electronic resources. These are something which you see. You do not, it's not different from writing. Then we come to communication styles. There are four basic communication styles. One is passive, the other is aggressive, the other is passive aggressive, the other is assertive. Now, there's one slide on each. Passive communication. What is passive communication? Individuals who use the passive communication styles often act indifferently. I am asking again and again. I am saying something again and again, and somebody is not responding. But she or he is listening to me. This happens at times when parents are, snubbing the children for doing something wrong, and the children just do not speak. And but one can make out, obviously, that they are listening to us. So frequently, a passive communicator's lack of outward communication can lead to misunderstanding. Now, you may, now this passive communication would create doubts. Whether somebody is angry, somebody is anxious, somebody is happy, somebody is sad, somebody is absent-minded, or what. So passive communicators often display a lack of eye contact, poor body posture, or an inability to say no. Right. Then second type is aggressive communication. Aggressive communication style is emphasizing by speaking in a loud or demanding voice. So maintaining intense eye contact, seeing somebody eye to eye, right, with fiery sort of frowning or having eye contact, or raising the volume or tone in a manner that shows that somebody is unhappy, somebody doesn't like what is going on. That may stay. That aggressive communication is normally used when somebody is blaming somebody, somebody is threatening somebody, somebody is criticizing somebody. So that is aggressive communication. Then another style is passive aggressive. Now, the aggressive style is you may be repeating, you may be shouting, you may be using vocal communication. But passive aggressive is that somebody is keeping mum, keeping quiet, and still his facial gestures, his looks, they show the annoyance on the face. So most passive aggressive communicators will mutter, or they would talk within their mouth. They would mumble. They would one would not understand what they are trying to say. They have difficulty acknowledging the anger, and well, the facial expression show all about that. Then we have got assertive. Assertive communicators can express their needs, desire, ideas, feelings, while also considering the needs of others. Now, assertive. Assertive means somebody may not be aggressive, somebody may not be that annoying, but somebody is putting his or her feet down, stressing that, well, this ought to be done. And this is how we are going to go about doing things. That is assertive. Normally, the in good houses, we find the parents are kind but assertive. They are loving but assertive. They are affectionate but assertive, because they have to put the children and keep the children on the right path. And obviously, for that, the parents need to be assertive. Then, how to become an effective, assertive communicator? How to become an effective, assertive communicator? That is a good quality, mind you. Understanding how others communicate can be key to getting your message across to them. In order to develop a more assertive communication style, here are a few tips. Keep in mind. Take ownership, meaning by I am telling you this. I want this to be done like this. I want to do this. So you tell that, well, this is your responsibility, that things should go right and go in this direction. So you emphasize I. Maintain eye contact. You cannot be assertive by shying away, by not looking eye to eye. One need to be having a eye contact while one is uttering statements such as "I want this." So learn to say no. Keep in mind a good family setup. In your a good family setup, similarly in a good class, one need to practice these communication skills. And similarly, we are talking about organizational leadership. So a good leader should also develop these homely devices, these good home devices. This is good class devices should be exercised at institutional level as well. And that is at times you have to say no. You enter the class, the children, most of the children would never like a serious discussion or classwork going on. Most of them would like to have some sort of jokes, some sort of irrelevant chat. Now, the teacher need to tell them. The teacher may start with a pleasantry. How are you? What are you? How have you come? I hope you are fine. After exchanging the pleasantries, the teacher should immediately get onto the track. And the track is that she has or he has, that the teacher has a given lesson plan, and that lesson is to be delivered within a given time without wastage of time. So then you should learn to say enough, no more of the jokes. We had enough of jokes. Let's discuss what we have to discuss today in the class. So similarly, the principal who or the manager or the section head or the this vice principal, they all are organizational leaders. So of their respective sections, of their respective groups, of their whole institution, if he is the principal or she is the principal. So they need to tell, right, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. What are the barriers which are likely to be there, which are going to hinder communication, which are going to retard communication? Those barriers, communication barriers, are the problems that arise at every stage of the communication process. I just showed you the communication process and what are the components of communication process, how it goes on. We discussed it at length in the previous session as well. So the communication barriers are the problems that arise at every stage of the communication process and have the potential to create misunderstanding and confusion. So no leader would like communication barrier because he would like the communication to be passed on as is desired and would like to have the effects which he wants to be created. Now, some of the main types of barrier, communication barriers can be physical barriers, language barriers, psychological barriers, emotional barriers, and organizational barriers. We'll take up each one of these major barriers and discuss what is it. Now, the first one we talked about is a physical barrier, and physical barrier are described as structural obstructions. They are structural obstructions in both human-made and natural-made environments that block effective communication so that the message cannot be sent from sender to the receiver. In the beginning of this session, I showed you at least two photographs where there was a wall in between and one communicator, that is the sender, wanted to pass on the message to the receiver, and that was a physical wall that was hindering the voice to be to spill over the other side. Some other physical barrier maybe environment, that is there is that the environment is such that it may be noisy, it may not be conducive, one cannot hear properly, then someone who is passing on the message is at a distance, the time is improper, proper, or there are other distractions due to which the message is not being heard as it is being the message as it is being sent. Second type of language barrier is that a barrier to communication between people who are unable to speak a common language. Now, if we go to a place where our language cannot be understood, or their language, we cannot make out what is it's all about. So, language can be a barrier. So, a barrier to communication between people who are unable to speak a common language, that the language barrier would be existent. Some of the language barriers are poor vocabulary or grammar. Might be somebody knows the language but is not perfect in that, and he's misusing the words or misusing the syntax. Unclear graphics or symbols, if it's written, then the graphics and symbols are not understood. Then there's a lot of verbosity or verbalism, that means bombastic words, how high sounding, uncommon words are being used which are not understood, or there's a lot of slang in that language. Then the third type of communication barrier may be psychological barrier. And in interpersonal communication, that is communication between two persons, the psychological factors like interest, somebody is not interested to hear, so he's just turning a deaf ear. Then attention, not paying attention. In the class may not be in a mood to listen. Maybe it is due to some fatigue or some other reason or lack of motivation, and concentration of both sender and receiver have an impact. So it could lead to a situation wherein a person would be physically present but mentally absent. That is the third one is a psychological barrier. The fourth barrier is the emotional barrier, and in that the emotional IQ of a person determines the ease and comfort with which they can communicate. A person who is emotionally mature will be able to understand and communicate well. So a person who is emotionally mature will be able to communicate effectively. Emotional barriers, maybe somebody is in anger, somebody is totally frustrated, and somebody is in a humorous mode, or somebody is in such an emotion, maybe sadness, maybe anger, that he cannot speak well or he cannot understand well. Then the fifth barrier is organizational barrier. Now, that is especially true of the organization where the communication between the boss and down to grassroots level, there are channels which are not very effective, or what we in technical terms we call horizontal flow of information or vertical flow of information. If there are barriers or there's some sort of blockade or there's lack of fluency, then that may be organizational barrier. So we saw that there are many methods of communication at organizational barrier. Each of these methods have its own problems and constraints that may become barrier to effective communication. If the organization is too big, probably it is not possible for the boss to get them together and communicate, and hence he has to adopt some via media. That via media may not be effective. Most of these barriers arise because of misinformation or lack of appropriate transparency available to the employees. In all, we can say that for effective organization leadership, the communication channels should be smooth, fluent, and they should be effective. The reason is that the effects of barriers on communication, barriers often lead to dependency, withdrawal, feeling of defeat, or inadequacy. Obviously, if someone is not able to communicate, so the feelings are going to be disturbed, emotions are going to arise. They act as feeling blockers. The barriers of communication act as feeling blockers and reduce the likelihood of finding a solution. It is not that only boss wants to say something down the ladder, down to grassroots, and he is not able. It may be the other way around. If the juniors or the workers or the low level managers are unable to communicate to the higher authorities, there is some blockage in the chain of command that may also result in bad communication. And if there are barriers, they could ultimately lead to souring of the relationship. The relationship would get sour, that they would get bitter, that would be not good for the organization. They could lead to increasing the emotional distance between the people who are communicating, and the methods to overcome these barriers of communication somehow are narrated here in this slide. Obviously, logically, whatever the barrier are, the barriers need to be removed, and the channels should be clear for communication. If there is a physical barrier, if there's a need to overcome physical barrier, the environment should be conductive to communication. Proper attention must be paid to keep the receiver in comfort. And then if there is a language barrier, the sender must use simple language and reduce verbalism. He should use the language which those with whom he is communicating they understand. If he is, for instance, using PowerPoint slides, the font should be big enough so that the last line sitting in the big room or a hall could read it. To reduce dependence on spoken words, one should use visual aids. And then, last but not the least, to overcome psychological barriers, guidance and counseling to remove prejudices or ill feeling must be undertaken.